Welcome to worship at First Unitarian Church of Rochester, New York. I invite you to join in voice, body, and spirit as we sing our opening hymn, led by my colleague, Amanda Thomas, the music director of Second Unitarian Church of Chicago.
Please join me in singing hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. You can change the world with your love. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. You are like no other being. What you can give, no other can give. To the future of our precious children, to the future of the world where we live. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. You can change the world with your love.
It is a joy to be with all of you. And as that just demonstrated, it certainly takes a team to make Sunday mornings and everyday work here at First Unitarian Church of Rochester. I'm Reverend Sherry, I'm the lead minister here, but I am never alone, as is obvious. I'm here with all of you. It wouldn't be Sunday morning without you, but leading worship with me today is also a pretty significant team, a real powerhouse, not just those of us who are here in-house, though of course we've got Tommy, we've got Arson. Oh, actually we might not have Arson today, that's a mistake. But we're joined today with folks from across the country, folks in our national movement, our international movement really, other Unitarian Universalists, from the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, Susan Frederick Gray, to someone who was a dear friend of mine from seminary, the Reverend Renoir Hamani, who now leads legislative ministry in California. We've got a great group of people leading worship. And those of you who are joining from home, your voices, both when you're singing out and when you're contributing to our gathered work throughout the week and the month, is no less important than those of us on camera. So thank you for being here. Here at First Unitarian, through spiritual connection in community, we gather because we open, we listen. We listen deeply to others and ourselves. We open to wonder and transformation, and we serve together with love and humility. This is true today. It is true every day. And I work with you, join with you to make this truth and beauty and love possible, not only in our own lives and in our own spirits, but also out and into the world. So here we gather, and if you're new here, I invite you to join UU 101 at 11:30 with Shannon. If you're new, or if you've been here for, I don't know, I think our oldest member has been a part of this congregation for over 80 years. So if you're anywhere in that range, from your very first day to having been a part of this congregation for up to 80 years, I invite you to join in some of the things happening this week. You can learn more about them in our newsletter, but also I want to draw special attention to the update from the southern border that's happening this week. It's critically important that as news and uncertainty unfolds around us, that we know that we can pay attention to more than one thing at once. And what's happening at the southern border is deeply important to us as Unitarian Universalists. Take a breath with me. Settle into this time and place. If your feet reach the ground, I recommend that you put it on. And if the worship leaders today are anything like I remember from seminary, from these fierce and loving souls, you'll want to buckle up as well. Let's light our chalice together with unison words. May the flame we now kindle inspire us to use our power to heal with love, to help with compassion, to bless with joy, and to seek liberation in the fullness of community.
I sometimes wonder if I should have been a psychologist. I often find that people feel comfortable recounting very personal stories to me, often without even a proper introduction. Airline travel seems to lend itself to this, where close quarters and long stretches of time create an intimate atmosphere to talk and share stories. One young lady on a flight to Florida shared that she was on her way to her funeral and detailed her family dynamics: the evil stepmother, the bickering over the estate, and various shenanigans of Uncle Max, the deceased, who, although the black sheep of the family, was this young lady's favorite uncle. All I did was listen, nodding and laughing as her tale unwound, assuring her that I understood and had strange family stories too. She punctuated her story with, "I can't believe I'm telling you all this," as a sort of an apology, I guess, as if her story should have no relevance to a stranger. When our plane landed, we waved goodbye, but I think she felt relieved to have shared her emotions about her uncle's passing and the weirdly relatable characters in her family. And this is why we come to church. Although we're attending services in Hollywood Square-style screen cubes and coffee hour without leaving our chairs and homes, it's still nice to tell and hear anecdotes about how our lives have unfolded and how we've landed where we are today. And even what we're doing after service today. Deeply listening is the first step in our first Unitarian mission. Hearing about each other's lives is how we build connection. The snippets that people choose to share are building a network, like the many tiny synapses that connect nerves throughout our bodies and make us wholly responsive. It's good to know in this imposed isolation that we're never really alone, and we share so much, even via Zoom.
Let us join together again in singing. Our next hymn, For What It's Worth, is led by our house band, Orange Sky.
Something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there telling me
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. As a song leader, one of the songs that I keep returning to, particularly in these days of uprising and reckoning, is Ella's Song, written by Dr. Bernice Johnson Regan and performed by Sweet Honey and the Rock. Its lyrics, which I know some of you are already very familiar with, set to music the words of Ella Baker, an organizer, activist, leader, teacher, a prophet in the civil rights movement. Until the killing of Black men, Black mothers' sons, becomes as important to the rest of the country as the killing of a white mother's son, we who believe in freedom cannot rest until it happens. Ella Baker's words in this song are ones she wrote over 50 years ago, but they could have been written yesterday. And I'll be honest, that reality breaks my heart. It leaves me crying out, will it ever end? For some of us, that question is one that has literal life and death implications that the rest of us cannot fully know. And as much as Ella Baker's words break my heart, they also charge my spirit. Their relevance to today's manifestation of resistance and community reminds me that we are a continuation of something much bigger, much more powerful, much more incredible than this single moment in our history. Our struggles to affirm the humanity and basic rights of Black and brown lives in this country and world, they did not begin with us, and they will not end with us. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Now, I admit it took me several years of singing these words to realize that Ella Baker probably wasn't telling me, Renwadiat Mustafa Taha Hamami, personally to never rest. No. In fact, none of us as individuals should be asked or expected to never rest. But all of us who believe in freedom, as a collective, as a community, we cannot rest. Ella's song, Ella's words are a charge for all of us together as a movement to never rest. We cannot stop fighting, we cannot stop creating, we cannot rest until freedom in its truest and most universal form exists in our world. Our faith as Unitarian Universalists who don't all agree on what happens after this life can all believe that what happens in this life matters so deeply that we have been called heretics, broken unjust laws, and probably gotten ourselves on more than one government list to make it known that we will not rest until freedom for every last one of us comes. And to be that unceasing, everlasting, perseverant, irritatingly prophetic movement that never rests, we need to reaffirm, deepen, and reaffirm our connections to each other as Unitarian Universalists. To remember that if we do this work together, we can not rest. And just as important, to be a true continuation of that much bigger, much more powerful, much more incredible freedom movement, we not only need to sustain our relationships within our faith, but we must build and sustain the relationships with communities and frontline liberators who have been leading the way to universal freedom for generations. We who believe in freedom cannot rest and cannot rest when we act as a truly interdependent collective. When we are carrying our load on the way to liberation, remembering that we are part of a movement reminds us that we are not carrying that load alone. Like a choir whose singers stagger their breathing to make sure a single note remains an unbroken sound, or a hospital that runs non-stop with a rotating staff, like migrating geese who take turns leading, following, or resting in their flying formation. We cannot rest, and we can not rest until freedom comes if we sustain our connections to one another. We need each other so that when we as individuals do rest, we know our movement towards universal freedom carries on, waiting for us to return and temporarily relieve another of their liberation load. As we count down the days to Election Day, we know that no matter the outcomes, our work will continue. We will not rest. We can not rest if we take care of each other and our shared vision for universal freedom that is possible, knowing that each and every one of us is doing the same for all of us, and knowing that our collaboration in this moment is a continuation of a movement that knows there will come a day when we, all of us who believe in freedom, can finally rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
I now invite you into the spiritual practice of generosity. Each week we take up an offering, which is split between our church and organizations in our wider community that lead us in the work of justice and compassion. Today, our collection will be split with Habitat for Humanity. Habitat believes in a world where everyone has a decent place to live. They partner with people to improve or build a place that they can call home, while working to alleviate the issues of vacant and abandoned properties. There are a number of ways to give, including Venmo, Simple Church, or by mailing in a check. Please give generously to support the life-affirming work of Habitat for Humanity and First Unitarian Church.
2, 3, 4. Them that's got shall get, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible says, and it still is news. Mama may have, and Papa may have, but God bless the child who's got his own, who's got his own. Well, the strong, they seem to get more, while the weak ones fade. Empty pockets don't never make the grade. Mama may have, and Papa may have, but God bless the child who's got his own, who's got his own. And when you've got money, you got lots of friends crowding round your door. But when the money's gone and only you remain, they won't come round anymore. No, no, no. And you know which relations can give you a crust of bread and such. You can help yourself, just don't take too much. Mama may have, and Papa may have, still. But God bless those who share their wealth, who share their life.
May I be light in you. May you be light in me. Into our hearts, into our souls, let love abide. May I be love in you. May you be love in me. From this place out to the world for all time. Spirit of life, sources of all that ever was and can be, we are guided by all that is sacred within our own hearts and minds to pray this prayer and to live this prayer. We offer up this simple and profound hope that we may be light, give light, and receive light in all the places we call home and in this sacred space that reaches across miles and experiences. That we may be love, give love, and receive love out in the world. May we never forget the impact and power of our voices. May we never lose sight of the songs in our hearts. D. Blanchard reminds us that they can be heard as songs of love or of longing, songs of encouragement or of comfort, songs of struggle or of security and care. But most of all, they are the songs of life, giving testimony to what has been, giving praise for all we're given, giving hope for all we strive for, and giving voice to the great mystery that carries each of us in and out of this world. Today, we hear those songs in all the ways we are learning and growing as communities of faith, hope, and love. We hear them as little ones become young ones. We hear them as loved ones pass from this life and into the unknown. And we hear them in the streets and at our polling places as people of faith and conscience pave the way for a better world, a better understanding, deeper care and accountability. And we hear them in the silences, a deep awareness that there are those among us as yet unheard and unaccounted for. May we never, ever forget the impact and the power of our voices. May we never, ever lose sight of the songs in our hearts. May grace and mercy follow us wherever we may go, whatever we feel called to and toward in the days and weeks ahead. Amen. Ashe. And blessed be.
This week, a little less than a month before Election Day, and a month to the day before Veterans Day. This week we gather to focus on you, the vote, and very specifically taking up our place in the exercise, the experiment that is both this representative democracy, that is the United States of America, and this living, breathing faith movement that is Unitarian Universalism. The timing of those federal holidays that I named, it's more than a coincidence. Well, the United States allows for and indeed exercises with more frequency and reckless abandon than I would like, allows for and exercises war and violence to achieve its ends. But peaceful democratic process, it's the preferred and first negotiation between parties and people that dare to try to work together. Civic holidays that guide our sacred holy days, that direct our attention in our gathering, it's an imperfect set of guardrails, to be sure. But we'd be remiss today if we miss the opportunity to honor and celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. Tomorrow, our holiday, to recognize the people who first occupied this land and still do, gathers our attention and directs us to the Haudenosaunee people. Here on Seneca land, one of the first 5, then 6 nations to make up what was then called the Iroquois Confederacy, but we now know as the Haudenosaunee. This group of people, their ways of being together, have guided the very foundational principles and documents and gatherings of the nation that we now count ourselves a part of. During Europe's Middle Ages or Dark Ages, depending on your preferred terminology, 900 years ago, the Haudenosaunee were crafting and forging a democratic set of documents and ways of being together that were embedded then in the United States Constitution and help form our way of living now. So we gather in thanksgiving, we gather with gratitude, we gather in recognition of some of the ways in which the principles of this land and the people that occupied it and still do guide us now. Some of the key core principles that Benjamin Franklin and others learned from the native peoples here in this land and then brought forward included a balance of power that separated military and civilian rule, elected officials that served as delegates for the whole body, a way of participating in difficult conversations that does not look like European parliamentary procedure or other places in which shouting down your opponent is accepted, but instead the expectation that one listens to their opposition before offering their own opinion and voice. These were part of the foundational principles because they were something that we learned, we being the original colonizers of this land, from the native peoples of this land. May the we that we use grow ever more expansive, ever more loving. Some of the things that didn't make it into the US Constitution, though I wish had, was of course a complete rejection of the idea of slavery and a political voice for women. While the possibility of impeachment was included in the US Constitution, it was no longer given to matriarchs, to women. If we had perhaps more directly learned from the Haudenosaunee then, we being, of course, the original colonizers of this land, women, mothers of warriors, were the first and only parties able to impeach leaders. It was not included then. And it would take centuries for a political voice to be included in the United States of America. That focus on many voices instead of that of a slim part of the population to form this representative democracy, it is a thing that we are ever and still learning. Now, democracy is not only the story of the past, but it's both the setting and the stakes of our current nation building efforts. And so in the spirit of many voices instead of one, I cede some of my time now to the President of the United States, the President of the Unitarian Universalist Association, Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, who comes to preach for us today.
I was 13 years old when I became a Unitarian Universalist. I was raised in this faith, but I was 13 when I claimed it as my own. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was waiting for my parents to finish their committee meetings after service. All the other kids had left, and I was bored. I wandered into the visitor's corner, and a little red wallet card caught my eye. It said in bold letters on the front, "What do Unitarian Universalists believe?" My 13-year-old self wondered, what do Unitarian Universalists believe? As I read the 10 statements written by the Reverend David O. Rankin, in my heart, in my soul, as I read those words, I said, yes, this is what I believe. One phrase in particular planted itself in me like the deepest truth, and I never forgot it. We believe in the motive force of love. It was in that moment when I knew that this was my religion. I start with this story to ground the work of UU the Vote in our theology, which is its foundation and its inspiration. This year marks the 250th anniversary of what we celebrate as the beginning of universalism in the United States. It was on September 30th, 1770, that Universalist John Murray preached his first sermon on this continent. And the truth that I read in that little red wallet card, the truth I've never forgotten, is the message of universalism. 250 years ago, in the context of religious notions of God rooted in punishment, damnation, and the division of humanity between worthy and unworthy, saved and damned, the idea of universal salvation, that God's love is unconditional, that no one is cast out, and that salvation is not individual but collective, was radical and liberating. Universalism proclaimed that humanity was bound together in a common destiny, and that love is the thread that binds each of us to the other and everyone to creation. Universalists believe that God is love. They also believed in hell. They just believed that it existed here and now on the earth. The great Universalist preacher Hosea Ballou was clear about how politicians and those in power used fear, stoked fear, to protect their greed and corruption and self-interest, and he knew the suffering that resulted from that. Rather than speak of theology in terms of speculative notions of God, Ballou spoke of it in terms of human experience here and now and our relationships to each other. A society that lives out the motive force of love would be one that fosters joy and liberation and thriving for all people. This is the highest calling of our faith as Unitarian Universalists, to live out, defend, and embrace this motive force of love in our lives, in our actions, in our commitments, and in our society. This is why UU the Vote says vote love. Today, in our context, we are witnessing the emboldening and authorization of ideologies rooted not in love and interdependence, but in domination, authoritarianism, and dehumanization. And just to be clear, this is not new. It has a long and deadly history on this continent going back more than 400 years. And yes, even our Universalist ancestors came from that same lineage of Christian European conquest and limited the vision of universalism only to white society, a limit that we are still trying to redeem ourselves from. It is dehumanization that creates systems that put children in cages, that deny health care to our transgender siblings, that allow police violence and the murder of Black people to continue unabated and without accountability. Dehumanization that allows triage protocols that devalue the lives of disabled people and that lead to systemic divestment from communities. The resources from housing to education, healthcare to jobs, and the criminalization of poverty. Just as Hosea Ballou named it, the tool of dehumanization, its propaganda is fear. Propaganda that tells us to fear our neighbor, that we are not family and kin, but enemies. This is the exact opposite of our theology of universalism that tells us that we have a common destiny and we are connected to one another in love. This is why UU the Vote says vote, love, defeat, hate. And while the forces of dehumanization and domination have always been a part of U.S. history, so too have been those who have resisted and organized for the values of dignity, equity, humanity, and love. These days are heartbreaking, they're infuriating, and they're frightening. On days when I lose my own strength, I turn to the words of Alice Walker, who reminds us, we remember our ancestors because it is an easy thing to forget, that we are not the first to suffer, rebel, fight, love, and die. The grace with which we embrace life in spite of the pain and the sorrow is always a measure of what has gone before us. We remember our ancestors, theological, familial, and in movement. We remember Francis, Ellen Watkins Harper, Hosea Ballou, John Brown, Sitting Bull, Ida B. Wells, Dr. King, Anne Braden, and so many more whose names history does not remember. Those who struggled and risked and fought and loved for the principles of justice, equity, liberty. This is why in UU the Vote we say vote love, we say defeat hate, because dear ones, we are on a precipice. Every single one of our most deeply held values is on the line right now. The current powers in government are showing in everything they do that the inherent worth and dignity of so many immigrants, Black people, disabled folks, trans and queer people does not matter to them. Human agency, interdependence, the democratic process are being disrupted and defiled daily. It is a radical act of faith to not only continue to believe in all of our cherished principles, but to demand them by speaking out, taking risks, organizing, leveraging our resources, and building networks of solidarity and power to protect one another and these values. We are on a precipice, and our actions right now will affect whether we have a chance to continue to bring our bold values forward, to rebuild, expand, and strengthen our democracy, to confront police violence, to upend racial inequity, to change divestment from communities, and make moves to protect the climate. Now is the time to draw on the grace, the courage, and the strength of all those who went before, to widen our comfort zones, and to do all we can to vote, love, and defeat hate. If you haven't taken any form of action yet, sign up for a shift with UU the Vote. I can tell you that it's fun. And if you've written postcards to voters, but you feel nervous about phone banking, do it with your fellow UUs. And if you've been all in with UU the Vote from the beginning, keep it up. and start planning for how you will show up and organize after November 3rd. Because democracy will not be restored in one election. It's been under systemic attack for decades, and justice will not roll down like waters in one election. Voting matters. It's absolutely critical, but it is not the end. It is just one piece of the long haul work of organizing for a future where all are free and where all can thrive. Will you show up in the streets, set up to contribute to a bail or legal assistance fund, open your church building to protesters needing refuge from state repression, tap into your own endowment or discretionary funds to make sure that grassroots organizers have the funds they need for their work? There is so much to do. And our faith calls us to love more radically, to give more generously, to believe more fervently that another world is possible, and be willing to be all in for that future. As you've heard me say many times before, this is no time for a casual faith, no time for a casual commitment to what you hold most dear. And this is no time to go it alone. Friends, we are in this work together. I invite you to be deeper in this work of You the Vote with us. May we remember that we are held by love always. May we remember that we are held by and with one another. And may we all together be all in today, tomorrow, next month, and next year for justice, for love, for democracy, and for a future that is free and thriving for all people. May it be so.
I have to remember to never try to preach after Reverend Susan. And yet here we are. We're here because when we gather on Sundays, it reminds us of the deepest values that we carry out into the week. It's a chance for us to ground ourselves, to reconnect with each other, but also with our innermost spirits, that which guides our soul. Holidays, holy days, are sacred, attention-seeking and providing moments in our calendar. Do the same. We organize for You the Vote and toward this election, even though it's never about one election. It matters, of course, that people across this country get to exercise their democratic rights. It matters, of course, who is elected and what policies they promote, what contracts they award, what legislation they move through. It matters, but it draws our attention to a principle that undergirds our way of being with people year-round, not just once every 4 years or even every November. We gather around holy days, we gather around Sundays so that it might draw our attention so that we open to the rest of the week. The ways that love is the thread that binds us. Our organizing now, our participation in the next level of activism, whether that's writing letters with Vote Forward, organized by folks here in our own congregation, or taking that step to phone bank, or having done that, inviting 5 additional friends. We do that because these are the muscles we need to exercise to love more fiercely moving forward. After Election Day, when we talk about the month after and the year after, those ways of being together, the gathering that we do in small groups to learn each other's names and nicknames, to learn each other's stories, to tell our deepest truths, these are the motive forces of love that will guide us moving forward. These are the ways we will need to learn to be together, to take courage, to build power, and to together provide a more loving and more affirming world. With you, my friends, it's not only Sundays that are possible, but a better world. I look forward to building it with you. May it be so. Amen.
Please join me in hymn number 1017, Building a New Way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free, free from hate and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, our world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
Please join me in extinguishing our chalice together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Love is the thread that binds us, but it is also that which sets us free. We are building a new way, working towards freedom, exercising the muscles of spirit that allow us to love more fervently. Go out into the week, out into the world, my friends. Go knowing that you are loved and that you are love. Together we do the work of love, of spirit, of justice. May it be so. Amen.